whatever the lead of a team is called. Hello friends, my name is Emily, I'm the bi, and here are some books off of my bookshelf. So, even though 2019 has ended and 2020 is here, trying to pretend like it's not going to be the garbage fire that every other year has been, I thought I would give you kind of a briefest as I can rundown of the 36 books I read and reread in 2019. So I should also say that I use a 10-star system instead of a 5-star system for both books and for movies when I'm rating them personally, and then I update it to a 5-star when I put it on Letterboxd or on Goodreads. Both of those links are down below. This is because I find a 10-star system to be a lot more nuanced, or have a lot more space for me to be nuanced in what otherwise feels like a very cut and dry rating system. So don't at me. So the first book I read in 2019 was #MurderTrending by Gretchen McNeil. This is a YA book that's set in the near future about a girl named Dee who gets wrongly convicted of murder and gets sentenced to the death penalty, where she gets sent to Alcatraz 2.0, which is an island of people who have all been convicted of the death penalty and are being systematically murdered by serial killers that are put out on the island. A wild concept that is also streamed and shown everywhere around the world. It's very Big Brother and how people get really into Big Brother, but it's like more people are into this than are into Big Brother. And so it's about her trying to prove that she didn't actually commit the murder that she's been accused of, and then trying to figure out what the fuck is going on this island and like why it exists and how it exists and what's happening. 6 out of 10. I'm not gonna read the sequel. Then I read Fence Volume 2, which was written by C.S. Pacat and drawn by Joanna the Mad. This is the second bind-up of issues of Fence, which is produced by Boombox Comics, one of my favorite comic distributors and creators. I love Boom, Boombox, Kaboom. That whole company is great, doing lots of good things. This is a sports comic about fencing. It's about a boy named Nicholas who is trying to become a great fencer, and Senji, who is his roommate, who is a great fencer, and they are rivals, and it is romance. And it's just very gay and I love it. Very good, 9 out of 10. The next book I read was Check Please, Volume 1, Book 1, #Hockey, which was written and drawn by Ngozi Ukazu. This started as a webcomic, which you can definitely feel. I like this book a lot. It's a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 for me. It does kind of have a pacing issue just because it was released serialized as a webcomic, but still a very enjoyable read. It is about a boy who is a vlogger, which is the style in which it's being drawn, who is a baker, and he was a figure skater, and now he's on the hockey team, and he's gay, and I love him. Love this. Really good. 8 or 9 out of 10 for me, for sure. I'm gonna read more of this. I even read a little bit more of it on the actual website, but I'm definitely gonna keep buying them, I think, physically, because they're really pretty. It's also from First Second Comics, which a lot of the comics I read this year were from, and love them. Love the work they're doing. The next book I read, and a couple of the other books on this list, are books that I don't physically have with me right now, just because I lent them to Megan and she is in Florida and has not sent them back, so I don't physically have them. But the next book I read was The Prince and the Dressmaker, which was written and drawn by Jen Wang. I love this book. This book is a 10 out of 10 for me. This is about a dressmaker who gets commissioned by the Prince of the kingdom she lives in to make dresses for him. Love it. It's so good. It is so sweet. I cried. I laughed. It's beautiful. I also had the pleasure of working with Jen Wang when I volunteered at Kala and like meeting her. She was so lovely. One of the nicest people ever. Kala is Comic Arts LA, which she is one of the exhibitors of and creators of, and very good experience. Super lovely. The next book I read, I was not as enthralled by. This book is also from Boombox, but I'm just not gonna keep reading it, and that's Dodge City Volume 1. This comic was written by Josh Turillo and drawn by Kara McGee, and while I really like the artwork and I like kind of some of the characters, it just felt extremely disjointed and I wasn't as invested in anybody as I felt like I should be. It's also a sports comic about dodgeball, which I thought would be kind of fun and campy, but it just didn't work for me on any level that I wanted it to work for me, so not into this. 5 out of 10. It was then that I decided to reread something, and so I went to a classic, an old favorite, one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite book series. I reread Captive Prince, all of it. So Captive Prince is a story of Damon, who is bisexual, love that for us, and he is a prince. He is overthrown, or like his kingdom is overthrown by his half-brother, who sends him as a slave to a neighboring kingdom who they were once at war with but kind of have tenuous peace with now. And he's made the slave of Laurent, who is the other prince, and Laurent is going through his own political turmoil because All of his family, except for him, is dead, except he's not old enough to be king, so his uncle is acting as the regent, and it's kind of like a sketchy Hamlet kind of thing in a way, and you know, it's great. It's an adult romance. I love it. It's kind of historical. Damon and Laurent are probably two of my favorite characters of all time. I love them both so much. So the book series consists of Captive Prince, Prince's Gambit, and then King's Rising, which I think is my favorite of the actual main trilogy. There's also a supplemental, The Summer Palace and Other Stories, which is 4 short stories that C.S. Pacat wrote after the end of King's Rising. They're not all set after King's Rising, only The Summer Palace is. The other ones are kind of set throughout the series and kind of have different POVs going on. Although actually I think the Merchant one is set after. I don't like that one as much. Anyway, The Summer Palace I think is the best one of these, and I definitely think should have been the last one. I don't know why she published Pet after, but I did read Pet for the first time because I hadn't actually read it before, even though I owned it. I don't know why, but you know, I reread these as well. All of these books are a 10 out of 10. I don't know how they could be anything else. Then I decided to read Kay Ancram's The Wicker King, which is a book about August and Jack, who are in the 90s. It's a period, not weird. And Jack has started seeing things, and it's up to August to kind of decide if he thinks that Jack is ill or if he thinks that Jack is magical, while also dealing with his own kind of stuff going on. He's also in love with his best friend. You know, it's a thing. This book is great. I love it. I'm going to reread it this year, I think. 9 out of 10. The next book I read was Yes, Roya, from one of my other favorite comic publishers that I discovered this year, which is Iron Circus Comics. Written by Spike Trotman and drawn by Emily Dench, I think is how you say her last name. This is the story of a young comic book writer and illustrator in like the 30s, like the boom of the comic industry. He's just trying to like make it, get somewhere, do something. And he ends up meeting his hero, who it turns out can't really draw, but his wife can draw. And his wife has been drawing for him for years because she's the goat of the comic book world, okay? So good. But wouldn't have been able to sell comics if she had tried. So she's using him as like a proxy basically. And they enter into like a fun BDSM, bisexual, polyamorous relationship. Good read. 9 out of 10, would recommend. The next book I read is probably my favorite from last year, especially of books that came out last year. You know, I know that I'm not alone. Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston is the be-all, end-all of romance for me right now. I just want to scream about this book forever. And I've been wanting to scream about this book since like the summer when I read it, and this book exists. I've never felt so represented. I've never felt so happy. It's so fucking good. This is a 10 out of 10 if you hadn't noticed. This is the story of Alex, who is the son of the first female president in a 2016 election that went a bit differently. And he is bisexual, realizes he's bisexual, which, by the way, is one of the greatest sequences, like him coming out and realizing that he's bisexual. The sequence of events that like happens while that is the crux of the story is just chef's kiss. So good. Anyway, he falls in love with Henry, who is the prince or one of the princes of England. Alternate history, it's great. And you know, it's just wonderful. It's so good. It's sort of enemies to lovers. Well, it's enemies to friends to lovers. And honestly, we are so blessed. The next book I read was A Lesson in Thorns by Sierra Simone, because we are so blessed. This is a book about 6 characters who grew up together like one summer or a couple of summers, who are coming back together to kind of renovate the manor that they spent time in. There's some ritualized sex stuff going on. This is BDSM erotica. It is good, real good. I'm obsessed. This is the first book in the Thorn Chapel series. I will talk about the second one in a minute because I also read that this year, and real good. Thank you very much, ma'am. 8 out of 10. The next book I read was Who Was Surprised? A comic book. It was the first collected volume of the new Buffy comic, which is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This volume is called High School is Hell. Iconic. The series is written by Jordi Belair and illustrated by Dan Mora. You know what? As a long-term Buffy stan, this was very good. It is sort of a retelling of the first season of Buffy, but in a way that's like knowing what we know about how Buffy goes and modernizing it. Willow's already gay, she's got a girlfriend, Anya is there. You're just like, wow. Spike and Drusilla pop up immediately. You're like, wow, you know exactly what I want. Amazing. It's really good. Literally, the cover is Buffy with a spike and a cell phone. I love it. I'm obsessed. I can't wait to continue this series. It's got a solid 9 out of 10 for me. The next book I read was Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. This book was written by Mariko Tamaki with art by Rosemary Valero O'Connell. I love this book. I got it as one of the blind date books that they sell at Ripped Bodice, and I was so pleasantly surprised by both getting this book, realizing this book was gay because nobody told me it was a queer book, and reading it, like actually reading it, like getting the information that it was a queer book and then actually consuming the media that it was. It's extremely good. It's a sort of slice of life about a girl named Freddie who is gay, who has been in this kind of on again, off again relationship with this other girl named Laura Dean. And that's it. It's just slice of life, trying to figure out who she is when Laura Dean breaks up with her, who she can be to stop the cycle that's happening where she keeps dating Laura Dean and keeps getting broken up with, and like her relationship with her friends that suffer because of her relationship with Laura Dean, and it's just extremely good. 9 out of 10. The next book I read, which I think is actually a little while after Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me because I just didn't want to read anything and I was just waiting for this book to come out because only one in the series that had come out was A Lesson in Thorns. But Feast of Sparks by Sierra Simone, which is the second book in the Thornchapel series, came out this year as well. It did not disappoint. This book is fucking great. It's a continuation. There's more weird sex ritual stuff. There's more polyamory. There's more bisexuality. Like, can there be more? But yes, there can be, and there is. It does have a twist, which includes incest. If that is a thing that you do not like, that kills a story for you, don't read it. You don't need it, but I don't care, so it's great. Love this for me. I want to say that I love this book so much that I think it is better than A Lesson in Thorns. 9 out of 10. The next book I read fulfilled all of Megan's hopes and dreams, which was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book, I knew I was going to love it. It's a 10 out of 10. I'm just gonna spoil that. 10 out of 10. It's fucking amazing. I knew that I was gonna love it because everything that Megan had told me about it led me to believe that I was going to love it. It has a bisexual lead, it's old Hollywood, there's like bi-gay old Hollywood solidarity. I am probably gonna reread this year at some point because it's just so good. Okay, I've had this book for a long time, and so I finally read it, which is Emily Carroll's Through the Woods. I saw this, I think 1 or 2 years ago all over BookTube from like some of my favorite booktubers, and they were like, this is great, this is amazing, and I finally bought it at some point, and then I finally read it in 2019. It took me a while actually, but this is a horror anthology comic series that is absolutely beautiful. Emily Carroll's art is completely stunning, and she doesn't use a lot of color, which is kind of nice. So when she does use color, it really pops. This book is genuinely scary. And I know a lot of people said that, and I was like, maybe everyone's just scaredy cats. And like, I am a scaredy cat, so like, yeah, maybe. But also, genuinely scary. It was a 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved it. The next book I read during 2019 was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston because I reread it. And I reread it in October because, and this is when I made all of my tabs, because I was about to start writing a vaguely contemporary story that was like new adult or like romance for NaNoWriMo, which is Holy Rattlesnakes. And I wanted to kind of see how Casey McQuiston dealt with building of intimacy and sexuality and like making them hot sexual scenes, hot and sexual. And so I reread it with that kind of intent, but also it was just one of my favorite books of the year and I knew I wanted to reread it. And I know that I'm probably about to reread it actually because it's also the year that the majority of this book takes place in. 10 out of 10, obviously. The next book I read was Bloom, which is also a first second comic as well. It was written by Kevin Panetta with art by Savannah Ganchu, I think is how you say her last name, but it could be very wrong. But Bloom is the story of a boy whose family owns a bakery and he wants to be in a band, I think is what it is. And he hates working in the bakery, and then they're going to hire somebody to work in the bakery. So he helps them hire someone who, spoiler alert, he likes. And it's a very sweet, soft romance that has a couple of pieces of drama, but overall is extremely just like soft and wonderful, really beautiful art. It was a solid 8 to 9 out of 10 for me. I really liked it a lot. Okay, so the next book I read, I picked up at a bookstore in like Silver Lake, I think Starlight Books maybe. I was waiting for a friend, so I was just wandering around and I ended up buying this book because the cover is gorgeous, but I cannot fully show it to you. And it just sounded intriguing. It's very slice of life, but extremely gay. The book is I'm Open to Anything by William E. Jones, and like there's just a full out dick on this cover. I cannot show it to you, but this book is extremely short. It's very good. It is definitely an indie book and I really liked it. It's about a kid in the late 80s, early 90s who moves to LA, and it's kind of about him wandering around LA, meeting people, meeting guys, having sex with guys. He starts fisting people. It's this whole experience, and it was just like a really intense, very good read. And I am so happy that I saw it, that I was intrigued by it, and that I picked it up. It was so good. One of my favorite things is that he goes to the New Beverly a lot, which used to be a porno theater but is now owned by Quentin Tarantino, where he plays film prints. And I actually just went with my boyfriend to see Django Unchained on 35mm, I think, and it was extremely good. Very good experience. The movie was like fine, but the experience of going was very good. And we got to have cheer wine. It was amazing. Anyway, he goes to the New Beverly a lot and kind of wanders around parts of LA that I know pretty well, and so it was always so interesting and wonderful to just like hear him talk about it, and like it's a completely different era of LA. So with all of that experience, I definitely think this is an 8 out of 10 for me. The next book I read was an anthology of superhero sex stories called Super Sexy Fun Times, which was written and drawn by Meredith McLaren. It also got an 8 out of 10 from me, and it's a really lovely anthology series about superheroes and supervillains and sidekicks and henchmen and people who love superheroes and supervillains and sex. And it's just every piece of it is sex, and it's great. Lots of variety in the couples, and there is something for everyone in this anthology. The next book I read digitally, which is The Guinevere Deception by Kristen White. This book is so good. I am obsessed with this book, and I think I'm gonna reread it soon. I think I'm gonna buy a physical copy of it actually. I was given a copy of it from NetGalley to review and really loved it. I think I'm gonna get a physical copy of it. I loved it so much, and that's just who I am, because I know I'm gonna want the other ones, so I just need to buy a physical copy of it, I guess. This is a book about Guinevere, who lives in an Arthurian myth where magic has been banned from Camelot. So Merlin has been kicked out. She was raised by Merlin, and she is now going back to Camelot, well, not back, going to Camelot to marry Arthur because she is set to protect him against the rising danger. Mordred is there. He is hot. There are literally 3 love interests, and you know what? They're all hot. Arthur, hot. Lancelot, hot. Mordred, hot. Great. Love this. What a romantic story. It's so good. The magic system is extremely interesting. It's not like too much, and it's not like too technical, but it's not too weird. I loved it. 10 out of 10. The next book I read was Females by Andrea Long Chu. This is an extremely short book. It is very good. It's from Verso Books, which is one of my favorite like alt publishing companies. She is looking at politics and gender and the intersection of all of those things, and femininity and masculinity and everything through the experience of being trans, and using this play from Valerie Solanas called Up Your Ass. And Valerie Solanas is the woman who wrote Scum Manifesto. She also is the woman who shot Andy Warhol, and she was, by all accounts, a TERF and kind of wild and hated women, but also hated men, and it's just like this very wild look at her and her work and kind of what she believed, what she didn't believe, and like what that means. And it's so good. Read it, read it, read it. 8 out of 10, read it. And then in 2019, I started reading manga again. Went through my collection and I started with the one series that I had complete that I knew that I loved, and that was Kaori Yuki's Godchild Earl Cain series. And so I read the first of that series, which is the Cain Saga, which is the original series about Cain, and it's just good. Written and drawn by Yuki Kaori, and loved it. Also wild. I don't think if I had read these now for the first time I would like them as much, but I am nostalgic, and even when shit is bonkers and like too much, and also like, what? I still love it. These are literally all of these manga are 8 out of 10 if you see them. Like I love it. I can't help it. It's so good. It's not, but it is. But the art, but also the nostalgia. Anyway, all of these are 8 out of 10. I also started Godchild immediately after that. The next book that I read in between reading all of the manga was Smut Peddler's Sex Machine, which is an anthology of sex stories with technology and robots and all kinds of stuff. It is also from Iron Circus Comics. I bought it at Kala. I love it. I'm obsessed. I read it in one sitting. There's lots and lots of different art styles, lots of different kinds of tech sex, and some of them are robots, some of them are like AI that's in your brain, some of them are like one of them is the like machine that somebody is driving that is like a war machine, but is also like the person who had used it like made it into a sex machine too. It's so good. If that's a thing you're interested in, this is it. 10 out of 10. Loved it. Obsessed. Gonna reread. I cannot wait to read more stuff by the people who wrote and drew stuff for this anthology. And then I read Godchild Volume 2. And then I finally finished on Christmas Day, or maybe the day before Christmas? Unsure. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is a book about Theo, whose mom tragically dies in an explosion at an art museum in New York, and the painting, The Goldfinch, goes missing. Theo takes it, and it's about grief, and it's about guilt, and it's about what all of those things do to you and do to your life, and it's him growing up into being an adult, into seeing what happens to the painting. It basically ends when the painting is recovered. And wow, 9 out of 10. Fucking great. Won a Pulitzer Prize. There's a goddamn reason. And then I read volumes 3 and 4 of Godchild. And then I finally read Katrina Leno's Summer of Salt. This is the story of a beautiful island that feels like Gilmore Girls. This is how I described it when I wrote my review, which is, it feels like if there was magic in Stars Hollow. It's a tiny island where one family is kind of maybe probably witches, but the main character is gay and she hasn't come into her powers yet, or doesn't think she has, or is concerned because everyone always has powers by the time they're 18 and she's not 18 yet. And then there's also this bird who is probably related to them who comes to the island every year. This year, she didn't show up and everyone is very concerned. Lots of bird watchers, very concerned. And then it's just like this unraveling of like, where is the bird? What happened to the bird? And then it becomes like, well, what happened to this person, and like what's going on here, and like why are things like this? And she is also falling in love with a girl who has come to the island with her brother to do the bird watching stuff, and it's just so good. There is sexual assault in this book. It is not on page, it is just mentioned, but a good content warning for you. It is extremely good. I loved it a lot. It's an 8 out of 10. Love a soft, queer, magical romance. And then the last book I read in 2019 was Volume 5 of Godchild. I should probably explain what Cain Saga and Godchild are. Maybe. I don't know. It's a series about a young earl. It's set in Victorian England. It's about a young earl named Cain, whose father is an abusive asshole. Cain is the child of his father and his sister, and so he's a child born of incest, and so his father is like, well, I can be abusive to you, fuck you. Very strange. Again, if I read this now for the first time as an adult, would it be my favorite manga series? Probably not. However, nostalgia, it's a powerful thing. Just ask J.J. Abrams. This is the series where he is trying to, I think in Cain Saga, he is trying to kill his dad or trying to like get rid of his dad. And then in Godchild, it is about his father has come back. He has control over a secret organization who is trying to, I don't know what the fuck they're trying. It's unclear what they're trying to do. Lots of pseudoscience, Sherlock Holmes kind of shit. There is a lot of suicide across the entire series, which I did not remember there being and was shocked to reread and find out, but I don't really know how to describe it. It's like if you wanted Jesus. Anyway, those are the 36 books I read in 2019. New reads and rereads. You know what? What's great about it? As I look at this list in front of me that has the order in which I read them, which is how I pulled that out of my ass, none of them were written by straight white men. Isn't that cool? That's kind of cool.